Next, we have our very own Shambhavi Thakur from Nanit Lab, who is presenting some really interesting new work on acculturation. And her talk is Sleep Across Generations, Immigration, Acculturation, and Sleep Health in Mothers and Infants. Thank you, Sham.
Thank you, Natalie. Today, I'll be presenting findings on how immigrant generational status relates to both maternal and infant sleep, and how stress and acculturation may help explain these patterns during early parenthood. We know that prior research has consistently shown that sleep duration and sleep quality differs across racial, ethnic, and immigrant groups, often shaped by acculturation-related stressors. However, we know far less about how these differences emerge early in parenthood, particularly when both maternal and infant sleep are considered together. To examine the impact of immigrant generational status on the intergenerational sleep health of mothers and their infants, we specifically wanted to look at three things. First was, how does sleep differ across the generations? Secondly, how does acculturation change things? Acculturation is the process through which individuals or groups adopt the cultural norms, behaviors, and practices of another cultural group, often due to prolonged contact or interaction, and it also encompasses both preservation of one's own cultural identity as well as adapting elements from the other cultures. And lastly, we wanted to explore whether perceived stress and acculturation were associated with maternal sleep quality as potential psychosocial pathway underlining generational differences. Study invitations were sent to existing Nanit users across the US, and all participants provided informed consent electronically before completing the survey. Infant sleep was measured objectively using Nanit auto-video-sonography, including total sleep time, night wakings, and parental nighttime crib visits. Maternal sleep and psychosocial experiences were captured through validated self-report measures, including Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, the perceived stress scale, and to understand acculturation, we used the Stephenson multi-group acculturation scale. This particular scale has two subscales, one which is ethnic society immersion, which is a level of engagement with one's heritage culture, and the second is dominant society immersion, which is the level of engagement with mainstream US cultural norms. And these subscales are scored from 1 to 4, 1 being lower immersion and 4 being highest. We received responses from over 1,200 mothers of infants aged 0 to 24 months with a mean age of 10. Over half of the sample comes from high-income households, and the cohort is predominantly white. Despite the limited diversity of this sample, we leveraged it to examine whether immigrant generational differences are evident even in socioeconomically advantaged contexts. We classified the sample based on their generational status as follows. First-generation mothers were born outside the United States. Second-generation mothers were born in the US but had at least one parent born outside the US, and non-immigrant mothers were born in the US to US-born parents. Looking first at the maternal sleep outcomes, we observed clear generational differences. Second-generation mothers reported significantly poorer overall sleep quality compared to non-immigrant mothers, while first-gen mothers did not differ on global sleep quality. However, when we look at the sleep latency, first-gen mothers struggled the most, taking longer to fall asleep than both non-immigrant and second-generation mothers. Finally, both first and second-gen mothers slept significantly fewer hours than non-immigrant mothers, highlighting that shorter sleep duration was a shared vulnerability across the two immigrant generations. When we turn to the infant sleep, infants of the first-gen mothers slept about 27 minutes less per night. They woke up more frequently, and they also had more parental nighttime visits. Importantly, infants of second-gen mothers did not differ significantly from infants in the non-immigrant families. And this suggests that the infant sleep vulnerability is concentrated in the first-generation families, even while maternal sleep struggles extend into the second generation. Across the entire sample, higher perceived stress was consistently associated with worse maternal sleep outcomes, including poorer global sleep quality, longer sleep latency, shorter sleep duration, longer sleep efficiency, greater sleep disturbance, more frequent sleep medication usage, and greater daytime dysfunction. Second generation mothers reported significantly higher perceived stress than both first and non immigrant mothers. And this elevated stress among second generation mothers may represent a distinct risk profile with implications for long term sleep health. With respect to acculturation, second generation mothers reported significantly greater emotion in mainstream US culture compared to first generation mothers. But the two groups did not differ in their engagement with heritage culture, whereas higher ethnic society immersion was associated with better overall sleep quality and higher sleep efficiency. Meanwhile, higher dominant society immersion was associated with lower daytime dysfunction. Together, these findings suggest that maintaining ties to the heritage culture may serve as a protective factor for sleep, even as families try to adapt their life in the US. To summarize these patterns across generations, first generations showed the greatest infant sleep disruption alongside maternal difficulties with sleep latency. Second generation families showed relatively preserved infant sleep, but mothers experienced the highest level of stress and poorest sleep quality. And taken together, these findings indicate that immigrants' generational status is associated with both maternal and infant sleep outcomes, though the patterns differ between first and second generation families. In conclusion, even with a predominantly high income sample, immigrant families experienced significant sleep disparities. And these findings suggest that having financial stability alone does not insulate these families from acculturation related stress or its impact on sleep. Another limitation of this study was that we did not assess the legal immigration status of the participant, which may represent an important and unmeasured source of stress for many immigrant families. Coming to the infants' sleep, infants of first-gen mothers showed shorter and more fragmented sleep, while second-gen mothers showed poorer sleep quality, suggesting potential early intergenerational vulnerability in sleep health. And clinically, this highlights the importance of tailored perinatal support for immigrant families, early screening for stress, particularly among the second-gen mothers, and supporting cultural and community connections as potential protective buffers for sleep and mental health. For future generation directions, we can investigate how specific immigration-related stressors directly influence sleep health in new parents, and we would also like to see how it is how this can differ between fathers and mothers. So those are some things that we want to do in the future. Finally, I want to extend my gratitude to my research partners. Special thanks to Maristella, Natalie, Dr. Berger, Dr. Orve, and Carmela for their expertise. And thank you to the families who participated and made this research possible. Thank you.